this morning what I want to do is emphasize our missions and the missionaries that we support, because I would suggest to you that if we were to poll the body right now and quiz you on guess which ones are the missionaries of CBC, I'm not sure you'd get. I don't know how well we do. We need to do better in this. I've been thinking about this. We've been talking about it in leadership, that we want to help others in the body be more aware of who our missionaries are, in communication with them, and all of those things as well. So that's one of the things I want to do here this morning. As we think about that, grab your Bibles and open up to Matthew 28. So open up to Matthew 28 as we talk about faith, promise, missions. And I'm going to mention over and over again this morning that these little cards at the Welcome Center are faith, promise, missions. All right, this is how we support our missionaries at CBC. It's separate budget outside of our general fund, and what we do is we gather and collect these promises that are, you don't put your name on this. It's not to advertise who's giving what. That's not what we Christians do. This is between us and the Lord. And you fill this out on what God is moving in your heart and how you'd like to support the missionary efforts of CBC. You turn this into the offering box. Us leaders collect these. We do simple math. We add it all up, and we have a budget, right? So I'll talk more about it. But I want you to see, just as we begin, Matthew 28:19. Go therefore, Jesus said. These are Jesus' parting words. When you look in history, and you think of, what is this person's what was their last words? Oh, so-and-so, these were their last words. Or the person on the chopping block, what are your last words? We're going to record those. Last words of an individual are very important. Well, these are some of Jesus' last words to us as believers throughout the generations who have been left here. Why? To share the gospel, to spread the light of the gospel. Jesus said in Matthew 28, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you, and behold, beautiful promise, I am with you always to the end of the age. Wasn't that really some of the disciples' tears and difficulties and struggles as Jesus made his way to the cross? Was that they had spent so much time with Jesus, his physical presence. And when Jesus would say, I'm going away, I'm going to die, I'm going away, that was heartbreaking for the disciples to think of him not being with them physically and present. But Jesus promises to them, I'll be with you always to the end of the age. And what are we to be doing? Well, it's pretty obvious, the mission and the vision of a church. So how do we kind of lay that out here at CBC? We'll go through this quick. We're a community of Christ followers cultivating a passion for God by loving him supremely and others intentionally. And we do this by knowing God in relationship and others, growing in our relationship with God and others, and going in evangelism, in ministry, in service, because that's what Jesus taught us. This really is just fleshing out the greatest commandment that Jesus taught us and the great commission that Jesus taught us to be about. So I want you to see as we begin how all of this fits together. This would be under the going realm of missions, that we are going. Not only are we going as missionaries in our own community, seeking to reach the lost, but we are also supporting, as churches have all throughout history, commissioning and supporting missionaries who are in other countries, other places, sharing the gospel with others. I mentioned this last week. What's the one thing you can't do when you're in heaven? The one thing nobody will do when you get to heaven is share the gospel, because we're all going to be saved. And so this should really put a fire in us, a passion in us, to maybe take our eyes off of ourselves and think long and hard about the souls that Jesus loves. When he looked unto the fields that were white unto harvest, he said, these are like the souls of people that I care about. I wish there would be more workers. I wish there would be more people who would care. Even then, even when Jesus spoke those words, the workers were few. All right, so do you have a heart for God's work? Do you have a heart for God's work here? Of course, as you think about this, we can support a lot of things in ministry. We can support a lot of things outside of a lot of good things we can support. But the Lord really does call us as members specifically to support the vision and mission of the local church. Why? Because Jesus said, I will build my church. And also the church is sending out missionaries. In the book of Romans, Paul's a missionary. That's what he's doing. It's a missionary effort. Paul used the church in Antioch to reach the entire eastern side of the Roman Empire. It's very likely in Romans that Paul was seeking to see the Church of Rome as a sending church to reach the Western Empire. He was always thinking, always moving, never retiring, always thinking about what's the next step, what's the next thing, what's the next soul, what's the next person I can reach. And he had that all the way into his mind until he was executed in Rome. So Paul was a missionary of missionaries, right? So do you have a heart for supporting the vision and mission of the local church? We are missionaries here, right? So if you're not connected as a member here, if you're not giving and supporting the church here, then we're not able to be the missionaries that God has called us here. Having conversations already in just a few weeks with the various people who have been on these fields, bringing their kids, connecting, building relationships, none of those things are possible unless the Lord moves in the hearts of His people to willingly and sacrificially give to help us reach this community in big ways. And not only that, as we talked about this morning, is supporting the missions of the local church. And we got to be make sure we're clear on this. It's all for God's glory. It's not for the name on the church building. It's not for making a name for ourselves. It's not even to feel good about ourselves. It's not even to feel good necessarily, although it always feels good to serve the Lord. It is to make God's name known. That's why He's left us here. You and I are His instruments, so we got to do that. Now let's talk about our missionaries. I'm going to have to go quick. We got some missionaries, and we got 2 more that we started supporting last week. So hold on tight. Here we go. First is Ruth and Archie Perez in Uruguay. They're going to be on deputation starting in November. So I'm going to reach out to them, and hopefully we're going to see them here sometime this year. So Ruth and Archie are in Uruguay, and they have been missionaries there for many, many years, supported for many years, all the way growing up here in this church from the time I can remember. So I'm under the assumption they came under the support of our church under my dad's ministry. And here they are in Colombia, which is right on kind of the border there of Argentina and Uruguay. A lot of soccer rivalry going on here between Uruguay and Argentina. But here they are in Colonia. And some of the things, just recently reading some things from them, Archie and Ruth were appointed by Baptist World Mission. So a lot of these missionaries, just so you know, are coming from a mission agency that helps us know these are the real deal. You know, it's kind of a vetting process. And so they're serving in Uruguay since 97. Settled in the city of Colonia, raising 5 children. Historically, Uruguay has been a slow country for things of God. But over the years, they have seen a tremendous harvest of souls. God has placed them in a strategic area where they have been able to plant churches and train nationals in their Bible Institute to go out and start more churches. You'll see this trend with our missionaries, and it's a very wise trend. It's start churches, train the locals, get out of there. We're not trying to make people look like Americans. We want them to be Christians in the country that they're in. So get there, share the gospel, train locals to take over that ministry. They're the best ones in a position to see that church move forward. That's what they've been doing. They're in church planning, training nationals, as I said. There's a Bible Institute and seminary. They've also been doing a men's addiction recovery program. Last time I checked, there were 30 or so individuals, men, that are going through that program. There's a huge need. I remember last time talking with them, drinking some mate tea, which we all shared, by the way. They were all, in Uruguay, you all share it. There's not this germ thing in America. So I was with the kids. I remember this years ago. And I was like, let me try a drink of it. And they're like, you would drink this? We drank out of it. I'm like, give it to me. And it was gross. But I did it. I was all things to all men. And so Ruth and Archie, we're going to see some newsletter stuff. The other thing, we're talking with AIM, the leaders. We're going to send out emails. We're going to try to be better about that. We're going to try to be more connected with our missionaries. Maybe some of you get a chance, some of our leaders get a chance to go visit them. Like I'm very convicted, just so you know, personally, very convicted in our responsibility of knowing what's going on in their lives and how we can pray for them. They are just like you and I. They have struggles in their marriage. They have struggles in their life. Not only in all of that, they have uprooted their whole family from a culture they have known and moved to another. Culture shock is a thing, people, right? So we really got to think about that. All right, so Ruth and Archie. Bruce Tuttle in Ukraine, but with the things going on in Ukraine, I'll tell you about that in a second. So he's there in Ukraine for many years, training at a seminary. His mission agency is Baptist International Evangelistic Ministries. They're involved in planning over 100 churches since 92, training nationals to take over those churches. Bruce is involved in teaching at the seminary to train the nationals so that they are thoroughly equipped to handle God's word. With the events that were going on and have been going on between Russia and Ukraine, I remember reaching out to him, and he stayed as long as he could. He was there when it was very unsafe. But since then, his son is in the country of Georgia, and he has relocated to Georgia for the time being to start the same ministry that he's doing, a seminary to train nationals, because a lot of times these countries are a lot closer than we think. In America, our country's huge, so we think of going to another country, it's like a long ways away. The countries in Europe are a lot closer. And so he's there in Georgia right now doing the same thing. And next, we get some local missionary efforts. Metro Women's Center, Colleen Tronson started and is the founder of Metro Women's Center in Crystal, Minnesota. Some of our members live and came from Crystal, Minnesota, so you might even have seen this place here, Metro Women's Center. And they're a pregnancy resource center where they are essentially trying to meet the needs of moms and dads with new little ones on the way, with also giving them the tools to see their child and to help them understand that this child is worth saving, to help them avoid terminating and executing their own child because people have lied to them that this is okay. And this is a tough ministry. She needs our support. She needs our prayers, because when you're doing this kind of counseling day in and day out, this is very difficult. They also have the Amazing Grace Home. Some of you have seen that. We re-landscaped a little bit of it years ago, where ladies can actually apply to stay at that home for a while they are pregnant. So it's really neat. So we have that one here in Minnesota. Sam and Molly Day have been missionaries here at our church in India for a very long time. They were first commissioned by Fourth Baptist Church right in Plymouth, so I'll tell you about that. But they're training national leadership. Sam Day is the president of Faith Baptist College in Kerala, India. And you can check out their website. They got tons of videos on there of what's going on at the college. And it's really neat how the Lord has worked there through his ministry. But they were commissioned, like I said, by Fourth Baptist Church in Plymouth. And they minister in India under Baptist World Mission. And Dr. Sam Day is the president, as I said, of Faith Baptist College and Seminary. They have started also 2 churches, Emmanuel Baptist Church in Cochin City and Faith Baptist Church on the college campus just north of Cochin. So there in India, Sam and Molly Day are ministering. So where else are we going to go here in the world? Well, let's come back here to the States in Arizona. This is a long-standing missionary that has been with us, came on, I believe, under my dad's ministry. I remember as a kid, we were in that area, and we actually stopped at the Indian reservation where he is ministering to the American Indians. And so Scott and Kathy Murphy, missionaries to the American Indians in Arizona, really neat mission field. They're assisting the native churches. There's gospel outreach and treatment centers where he regularly is able to connect with people. There's a tribal radio ministry, and the Native Voices Project is really cool. You can go on their website. You can see this on YouTube. They have natives who have come to Christ. I don't know if you like listening to testimonies. I love hearing how God has changed the lives of people, to transform them, to save them. So, if you're here this morning and you're just kind of new with us and you're hearing all about this missions, just stop the tape for a second. You need a relationship with Jesus before you really understand the need to care about what's going on in other parts of the world. The reason we're so excited about sharing Jesus with others is because we understood how great of sinners we are and how in need of his mercy we are, and we saw Jesus for who he is, and we simply surrendered to him, asked him to forgive us and save us. That's what you need if you're here this morning and you don't know Jesus. That's what they're doing here in Arizona. The Native Voices Project is them sharing testimonies of how they came to Christ. And there's a lot of addiction and struggles that go on, just like any other parts of the world, in the American Indian reservations. So they're equipping the natives to reach the lost as well. He says this in a letter that he had written: if our labors and our high calling bring honor to Christ, then we will have been a success in our ministry. Do you remember a couple weeks ago I said to you, I'm not, no offense, but I'm not trying to be your favorite pastor. I'm just trying to be God's faithful pastor. Well, I think what he's saying here is I'm not trying to be anybody. I'm just trying to be faithful. And we will be a success if we just stay faithful. Over the course of 4 decades of ministry here at the Reservation, we have experienced many valleys of discouragement and some insurmountable obstacles. We've been reminded many times of my mother's theme verse when we came to the Navajo field in '69. Faithful is he that calleth you, who will also do it. And the next verse, brethren, pray for us, has become a second pillar in our missionary philosophy. We truly do covet your prayers. If you just think for about 3 seconds, I think being on the mission field can be one of the loneliest places on earth. Because you're there, but you don't always have the loving connectivity of a relational community there to support you. And you have many people you're sending letters to and all these things, but you wonder, are they reading it? Do they care about us? I mean, I know they give us money, but we're actually real people. That's where I feel like, and just thinking through this, I've been more convicted in our responsibility to love them and to connect with them and know what's going on in their life. So that's Scott and Kathy there in Arizona. Next we go over to Tom Latham, which we are just coming on a year or so of his wife's passing. So he ministered with his wife Penny for many years in Brazil. And Tom is an awesome guy. He's always excited. I have never seen Tom not excited about sharing Jesus with someone. I haven't seen it. And when you read his emails, which he sends out regularly, so let us know. We'll help you make sure you get those. We try to relay them out. You can get directly on their list. But Tom is in the mission field in Brazil for many years, here in the Rio Grande do Sul. And in the things he's been involved in are church planning, youth outreach, public school outreach, and wrestling outreach. He has, for many years, figured out unique ways to connect with people in his community, much the way we're trying to learn from him by what we're doing here. Unique ways to connect with people in hopes that they might ask of the hope that is in us, which is Jesus. And I just saw this last week. He sent an email. And he said, someone said to me, oh, you're retired. You're retired, Tom. And he's like, let me tell you, I have not retired. And he started to lay out. He preaches twice a week. He does 3-4 youth ministries a day. He does wrestling. So wrestling's a big thing in Brazil. And he coaches. And he's coaching 3-4 whatever wrestling teams, plus preaching twice a month, leading the youth activities. He's still considered the senior pastor. So I would say he hasn't retired yet. And the Lord has given him strength. And so he really is just a servant of God who loves to share Jesus with others. His testimony is awesome. Someday, hopefully, he'll be here to share it again. All right, so we see Tom Latham there in Brazil. Now, these are the two are the newest ones that we have recently added to our church support for missionaries. This is Redemption House, and they're a gospel-centered, sober living ministry for men in Minnetrista, Minnesota. Some of you were here last year when a group of the men from the house came, and they played music with me. They helped me lead worship. It was really exciting. So their mission field, of course, and their mission statement on their website is to liberate people from the enslavement and idolatry of addiction by radical transformation of the heart through a redemptive fellowship with Christ for His glory and our joy. What I love about Redemption House is the commonality that we have with them in biblical counseling. So I know the founder of the house, he also, like me, we struggled in different ways, of course, but we were given the same biblical counseling to understand the heart of worship, to understand the root cause of behavior, not just trying to change behavior, change the fruit on the tree, but to actually change the heart and the root system. And that is what really drives their whole ministry. And I think because they're so much local, like Metro Women's Center is, I think we have an even greater opportunity to figure out how we can connect with them, what we can do. Sometimes you can go have dinner with the guys. You can bring dinner, and you can go have dinner with the guys at the treatment center and just get to know them. We have opportunities to bring them down here again. So we need to explore all of those things, and help is always needed. If the Lord's moving in your heart, you have a passion to connect with missions and things like that, well, we don't have everything figured out. Just here to tell you. So if you want to connect with them and help us do that, it'd be great. I have a dream that I haven't told them about, so probably want to tell them about that since I'm going to say it publicly. But my dream is, what if we someday had a redemption house down here? So we worked with them. So instead of the house that's up in Minnetonka area, we have a southern house where we could work in tandem with them so that they could help us with all the ways in which they have learned that ministry, and we can support them in a very specific way. There is nothing in this area down here in southern Minnesota like that. Nothing. And especially nothing for women. So we need to dream big, is what I'm saying. So we will want to join in with them in those efforts. But again, they can't do these things. They can't offer housing and accountability and biblical counseling unless they are supported. Right? So check out their website too. It's really neat. It's redemptionhouse.net. And they've got some really good stuff on there. You can follow them on Facebook. They're always sharing pictures, sharing worship. They're sharing times where they're surrounded by one individual and they're praying for him. They're saying, this brother is going out into the world. He's completed the program. We're just praying for safety for him. And so, when you think of addictions, when you think of that, addictions are not, these types of addictions, although they have a physical element to them, the main component is a worship problem. If you're chasing after something, which we all have, and it becomes enslaving, whether it's a bottle, whether it's something else, it has become your God. And the only way to conquer that is to come in contact with a God so much greater, so much more loving, who promises so much more than that thing could ever do for you. That's what you need, right? And that's what they're trying to share with these guys. If you haven't worked with people who struggle with addiction, you can't be judgmental here. These people need help. They need support. They need encouragement. And we need people like them who know how to actually do that. So this gets me jacked up. I'm just telling you that. I'm jacked. All right, so we added them last year, and then we also added Trevor and Amelia Galbraith. And they were ministering in the UK, and we're starting out in Great Britain, but through certain circumstances, they have made their way to start really some new ministry efforts in Scotland. I don't know if some of you have been to Scotland, but next time you go, throw me in your bag. Let's do this. We'll go to Scotland and we'll visit them. This is Trevor and Amelia and their two little daughters. If you go on Facebook, you can look up Trevor and Amelia. If you just search Trevor and Amelia, I think missionaries, you will find they have a public missionary page that you can like, or let me know if you don't find it, because I don't know if I got invited to it or whatever, but it's really an awesome way to stay connected with what they're doing, and then you're just more aware of how to pray for them, how to support them. And so they're in Scotland, here in Dunfermline. I don't know if I said that right, but I'm assuming if I had the Lucky Charms, I'd say Dunfermline. I don't know. If you're Irish, let me know if I did it right. But here they are, ministering in this community, really starting out kind of, like I said, a new ministry effort. So that's tough, right? Because you're starting out, there's really you're starting there as a missionary, and you're just simply trying to figure out unique ways. Hand out cards, come to a Bible study. Do you want to talk about Jesus? This is not easy work, right? And we are so encouraged by missionaries who do unique things to connect with people. And I want you to think, that's why we're doing what we're doing at our church. Do you realize we are missionaries here in New Prague? So if we're not thinking like they are with a mission mindset, you know what we're doing? We're maintaining. And Jesus said, go into all the world and preach the gospel. Figure out, he's telling us to go, go, go. He doesn't say maintain. Go into all the world and maintain. If we're maintaining, we're losing ground. What I'd like to see us at CBC, now I'm preaching a little bit, but what I'd like to see at CBC is for us to outpace our community. And what I mean by that is we don't allow the community to dictate the DNA of the church. Small town, you'll always be a small church. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in a God who sends revival anywhere, anytime. And so we don't let the DNA of a community dictate the DNA of a church. We let God's word and the preaching and the unique ways that we can have a mission mindset right here dictate how this church moves, how this church grows, and how souls are reached. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want less souls here being discipled. I don't want less souls here hearing about Jesus and the freedom that I've found in the gospel. I want more. But that's God's doing. We're going to work in the field. God will send the rain. That's his business, right? That's what they're doing here, Trevor and Amelia. They are sent out by Baptist Mid Missions. Again, another agency that helps us vet. There was one time, I actually have a minute for this illustration. This is great. I never have a minute. This is beautiful. There was one time Amy and I were in Nashville, Tennessee years ago, and we were on vacation, but it was a Wednesday. We didn't have kids, and we're like, let's find a church to go to. And wasn't wrong if we didn't, but we went to this church right in Nashville, big church. And there was a guy that got up who did a missions presentation. He was claiming to be a missionary. And turns out the pastor met him somehow like on the street, cold turkey. And then that night, let this guy get up here and speak and say, here's what I'm doing, here's where I'm going. And I'm a little analytical and slightly skeptical at certain times. So I'm like searching. I'm not finding anything about this guy. I'm not finding anything about a mission agency. I'm not finding anything anywhere that this guy's a legit missionary. But I'm just a visitor. I'm just sitting there bewildered. Like, it's not my responsibility to be like, hey, whoa, stop the tape. And at the end of that presentation, people were handing out money to this guy like crazy. And I'm thinking to myself, now I hope I'm wrong, but this is crazy. We have to do better to know, because there are people out there who figure out unique ways, and we Christians, we can be a little naive sometimes. Like, oh, you say all the right things? Here's some money. So we have to be, that's why these mission agencies exist, right? They exist to avoid situations like that, right? So they're with Baptist Mid-Missions, church planning, evangelism, strategic partnerships. The good thing with Trevor, he's like me, has some family in the ministry. His dad's been over in Europe as a missionary. His brother's over there as well. So they have some family support and connections, which is a really good thing, right? Now, think of Psalm 96, verse 3. We could look at the whole psalm if we wanted to, but Psalm 96, verse 3 says, declare his glory among the nations. We were talking about this in growth group on Wednesday a little bit, that when you think of the Old Testament, you have to understand that the Old Testament way in which God declared his glory was he was inviting people to come and see. Come and see the nation of Israel. Come and see what God did to the children of Israel, leading them out of Egypt. And God's glory went out by seeing what he did through this insignificant little nation that no one ever thought could exist or survive or take out the mighty Egyptian army as the sea swallowed him up. The Old Testament was a come and see God's glory. The New Testament is a go and tell. Go, get out there. Go and tell. All of us, as I was saying in the membership class, we have a responsibility. One of the responsibilities of a member at Community Baptist Church is to declare God's glory and share the gospel. All of us have unique paths from Monday all the way till we meet again that we go. Unique paths. Sometimes we stop here and grab coffee. Sometimes we're going here. We normally get gas here. All opportunities are all around us if you open your eyes to the fields that are white unto harvest. Just saying hi and how is your day going is like mind-blowing to the selfish culture that we live in. I was getting this sub yesterday at Subway, and it was just like, it's amazing to me how people they go through the motions of like, give me this on this, give me this on that. And I'm not saying it's always wrong, but like, these are real people behind the glass. Like, they're real living people. They're not robots. And when you say to them, how's your day going? Has it been busy when it's rained? I used to work here 5 years when I went to high school, because I did. But that was back when we wore the polos. Sandwich artist. You just got the t-shirt? I was a sandwich artist. And we're laughing and talking about that. And their whole day, the whole team at Subway seems to brighten up a little bit. It's like someone noticed we're not robots. You realize that's like mind-blowing in our culture. We have an amazing opportunity to show love and kindness for hopes that we could strike up a conversation about Jesus. What in the world's up with that guy? He's like happy. What's up with Joe? He's up here, he's like happy. He's a happy guy. Well, laughter and cheerful heart is good medicine, the scriptures say. So you should take a dose of that a couple times a day, right? Declare his glory among the nations. That's our mission. That's our call as believers. His marvelous works among all the people. Well, one of the best ways that we do that, of course, is by what? Sharing our testimony of what Jesus has done for us. Why do we have members share their testimony before they join here? Because you should be willing to think through how Jesus saved you, how you were saved, the circumstances of your salvation, so that you would be able to share that with others. Probably one of the most transitioning ways I've shared the gospel is just simply sharing my own story. Here's how I came to Jesus. I know you might not believe it, but I'm telling you, I was lost. I was broken. I was a sinner. And I get it. I'm not saying you have to believe it, but I'm just telling you he's the real deal. And I wouldn't be standing in front of you if it wasn't for it. You just share your own story, right? Declare his glory among the nations, his marvelous works among all the peoples. All right, so these are our missionaries all over the world. We'll come back to that map. Let me come back to it. All right, so currently these are our missionaries that are supported through what we call our faith promise missions. All right, some churches support their missionaries in different ways. This is just the way that our church has chosen to do it, through a separate budget that is where people pray and they think through how do I feel the Lord leading me to give to support the missionary efforts of CBC? And you fill that out. That's how these people are eating their food, just so you understand. This is how these people are knowing that they can survive in a country they weren't born in. That's some serious dependence on the Lord, isn't it? To be completely dependent on the fact that God is going to move in the hearts of people, that they would choose to care about us even though they don't see us very often. See, I'm coming back to it again. I'm very convicted that these individuals have hurts, pains, sorrows, and burdens that I will be honest with you, we're sometimes not as aware of them as we should be. And we need to do better. We need to. So we're going to talk a lot more about that in the coming months, better communication. But one of the things here for Sunday is, will you support them? I will say this. If you're a member at Community Baptist Church, you have a serious obligation to support these missionaries, because as you joined and covenanted with us in this community, you have made the statement that you will support what this church is doing, and that's including financially. So we've got to think long and hard and be challenged that based on what the Lord's done for us, man, we want to see other souls come to know Jesus. All right, so as we come back to these two questions as we close it up, all right, is your heart moved to participate in helping these missionaries reach the lost? Is your heart moved? Why should your heart be moved? Well, we could talk about multiple reasons why your heart should be moved. But the main reason, of course, is that it's the love of Christ, Paul says, that compels us. See, if you don't give and you don't have a passion for souls, I think you're not daily and continuously aware of how much you are in need of forgiveness and mercy. I was talking to somebody this morning here. It's like, His mercies are new every morning, and let me tell you, I needed them at 12:01. Seriously, come talk to me about it. We need God's mercy every day. You're not who you need to be. God didn't save you because you were perfect. He saved you because you recognized you weren't perfect and that you needed salvation. So is your heart moved? Because that's what these missionaries are seeking to do. They're seeking to share the gospel with the lost. All right, jump over to 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Jump over to 2 Corinthians chapter 5. I want to help you if your heart isn't as moved. Let the great missionary Paul stir your heart. 2 Corinthians chapter 5. If you find Romans, we've been there a while. You can probably find that. Just go right. It's 1 Corinthians, then 2 Corinthians. So 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Now look at verse 14 of 2 Corinthians 5. Paul is really expressing his heart. And he says, for the love of Christ, what? What does it do? It controls us. 2 Corinthians 5:14 says, for the love of Christ controls us because, and now he's going to give the reason why. Why does the love of Christ control us? Because we have concluded this, that one has died for all. That's Jesus. Therefore, all have died. And he died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who for their sake died and was raised. See, when Christ died on the cross, he was making a declaration not only that you could be forgiven, but that if you surrender to him, you are going to die to self. And dying to self, if you're not used to that terminology, simply means I don't live for what I want anymore. I don't view anything that I have simply as mine. For a Christian, there ultimately isn't really any such thing as mine. That's mine. We see this in the nursery. It could be going on right now. That's mine. For us as Christians, there really isn't anything as mine. It's a joyful, open-handed, God, you love me, you save me, all I am is yours. All I am is yours. So then he goes on. If you got 2 Corinthians 5 open, look at verse 17. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. Now, let's read the rest of this. Verse 18. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. You know what reconciliation is? Two people got an issue, and if they're going to reconcile that issue, someone comes in and helps them find peace and work it out. Well, what was the reconciliation that needed to take place at the cross? That I'm a sinner, and God is perfectly holy, and there's no way that that can be reconciled, just him and I, because there's nothing I can do to save myself or forgive myself. Only Jesus could step in and be the mediator between God and men and reconcile that relationship. Again, we're talking about missions, but if you don't know Jesus, your biggest problem is not something you're chasing after. It's not something you need that somebody. Your biggest struggle is that you need a relationship with God. He goes on, verse 20. Therefore, what does it say? We are, you could say it. It's okay. It's church. I get it. We are what? Ambassadors for Christ. See, we have died to self, and we've been commissioned as ambassadors. An ambassador is one who represents another, that when you speak for him. That what you do with your money, you do for him. That what you do with your time, you do for him. You see? We are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ to be reconciled to God. That's what these missionaries are doing. That's what we should be doing, in hopes that we have a conversation to say, you need to be made right with God. Your greatest problem is that you need Christ, you need God, you need a relationship with him. He wants to freely give you that. Verse 21, for our sake, love this verse. For our sake, he made him, that's Jesus, to be sin, who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. That's how we're going to be reconciled. Is that I'm going to have to find a purity and a righteousness that I can't earn, that I can't create, that only Jesus can deposit into my bank account, because I am bankrupt. That should fuel us to declare God's glory among the nations and support our missionaries. Question number 2, is your heart moved to support these missionaries financially through our Faith Promise missions? Again, these cards are out there. They don't necessarily have to be, we try to basically take a month where we collect them throughout the month. So if it's your first time hearing about Faith Promise missions, we're not trying to put any undue pressure that you just fill it out today. No, we want you to pray about it. We want you to think long and hard about it. We want you to recognize that this is a serious matter, okay? Let me help you understand how this is a serious matter. Over the years, we've been doing this many years, but do you understand that if you pledge to these missionaries, we simply are just rebounding that money right back to them. So if you were to leave this place, let's say you promised that you were going to give, I don't know, $5,000 to Faith Promise Mission. We will set a budget that says we have that $5,000 because you promised before God that it's going to happen. But if you're like, whatever, I'm out, I'm leaving, I'm moving away, do you realize that we're just a rebound? We're just taking that money and giving it to these people on the field. If you were to leave this place and not fulfill this, that means they're not getting the finances that we said that they would get. That's a serious matter, right? So we want you to take it serious, that when I make a promise, when Amy and I think through and we make a promise what we're going to do, like this is a non-negotiable, I'm not getting out of this. I promise this in faith to the Lord. Yes, there's extenuating circumstances, I get that, but I promise this to the Lord that I want to help these brothers and sisters on the field financially, prayerfully, and supporting them in any way that I can. All right? So these are just 2 questions as we close in prayer. Is your heart moved to participate? Because if your heart isn't, I'm just letting you know God don't need your money. He really doesn't. Your heart's got to be in the right place. And secondly, is your heart moved to support these missionaries financially through Faith Promise missionaries? We are ambassadors, right? And we are that here locally, in our own Jerusalem, as we call it, and we also need to be that globally, supporting other ambassadors that the Lord has carried on to other places. So let's pray.